Okay, hello everybody. My name is Sam Hunt. I'm the Deputy Head Teacher at Sandhurst School in Bracknell Forest. And my school is one of very few in the country who has what is called the quality mark for Holocaust and genocide education. So I'm going to talk about what the Holocaust was and why I believe, and my school believes, that it's important, vitally important actually, that we teach the next generation about the Holocaust. First of all, even before the Nazis came into power in Germany, there had been Jewish communities living all over Europe for over 2,000 years. And the Jewish communities were very different from one another. Some communities were very rich, well-educated people with well-paid jobs. Some were very, very poor, very poorly educated people who had peasant lifestyles. Some Jewish communities were assimilated, so they sort of blended in with the host community. Others perhaps were more isolated. But all in all, the Jewish community of Europe had actually made a fantastic contribution to European society. For example, before the Nazis came to power, Germany had won more Nobel Prizes than any other country in the world. And the majority of Nobel Prize winners in Germany were actually German Jews. So people like Einstein and Sigmund Freud. But then, of course, Adolf Hitler came to power into Germany in 1933, and all the contribution that the Jewish community had made to German society for generations was swept away, because everything that had gone wrong in Germany was blamed by Hitler on the Jews. The fact that Germany had lost World War I, the fact that there was raging inflation, the fact that there was high unemployment, all of that, Hitler said, was the fault of the Jewish community, even though the Jewish community was less than 1% of the German population. He immediately started to use most horrific propaganda to demonize Jewish people, to say to the German population, these people are dangerous, don't be friends with them, don't go near them, don't trust them, because they will ruin our country and we need to get rid of them once and for all. And so just 2 years later, by 1935, when the Nazis put in place the Nuremberg Laws, which stripped the Jewish population of all the rights that a citizen should enjoy. No, there weren't mass demonstrations in the street. There weren't people coming out and saying, you cannot treat other human beings like this. Nobody seemed to care. The propaganda had worked. By 1938, November 1938, when there was this event known as Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, a night when many people in Germany went on a rampage against the Jewish population, burning down synagogues, smashing into Jewish people's homes and shops and businesses, and taking many people off to the first concentration camp known as Dachau. Again, many people started to get involved and to contribute to that night of horror against the Jewish population of Germany. Of course, then we saw Nazi Germany invade much of Europe, and whatever country the Nazis invaded, they then put in place the persecution that the German Jews had been enduring for a number of years. So Jews were made to wear the Star of David as a badge of shame, where they could be recognized in the streets. It was perfectly legal to attack them, to attack their businesses and shops, and to humiliate them in the streets. And very few people seemed to care that this was happening. By 1940, the Nazis had over 10 million Jewish people all around Europe under their control. And by this point, the Nazi policy was to isolate the Jews, to make sure that people, they were out of society. So they had opened over 5,000 ghettos and concentration camps all around Europe. horrific areas, slum areas of the city where large numbers of people were crammed into very small areas, and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people died of malnutrition, of disease, of overwork, lack of medication and things like that. But by this point, the Nazis had the Jews exactly where they needed them, in these holding centres. So they weren't having to search for them all over Europe. They now had them trapped where they could then later on kill them. One of the first methods that the Nazis used were by Einsatzgruppen. Einsatzgruppen were mobile killing squads who travelled throughout Europe, taking Jewish people out of their homes, out of their villages, taking them to remote areas, giving them shovels to dig long trenches, and then shooting them in the back of the head so that they fell into the grave that they had just built for themselves. But eventually, the Nazis began to see they were fighting a war by this point, and bullets cost money. And the chief Nazis in 1942, January, got together to say, how can we murder 10 million people in a way that is cheap, that is less costly than using bullets, and also is not quite so up close and personal for our soldiers who are doing the killing. We need to find a way that is kinder, would you believe, to our soldiers. Not kinder to the Jews, the victims, of course, but kinder to the people who are actually doing the killings themselves. So the plan that was devised at the Wannsee Conference became known as the final solution. As part of the final solution, the Nazis built in Poland 6 designated killing centres, extermination camps: Chelmno, Sobibor, Majdanek, Treblinka, Belzec, and the most notorious of all, perhaps, Auschwitz-Birkenau. Jews from all over Europe then were transported in cattle trucks from the places where they were being held into these extermination centres. In most of these centres, like Treblinka, for example, people were gassed on arrival. But in others, for example, like Auschwitz-Birkenau, they had a dual role. Yes, they were mass killing centres, but they were also areas for slave labour, where people were worked to death for the Nazi war effort. So for everybody who arrived at Auschwitz, 80%, about 4 in every 5 would be sent straight to the gas chamber. But 20%, 1 in every 5, would be selected to go and live and work as slave labourers in the camp. The average life expectancy for these people selected to work was only actually 3 months. And the average person was living on less than 200 calories of food a day. But of course, most never saw the camps. Most were taken straight to the gas chambers, like these people here, on their way to the gas chambers, and they were gassed on arrival. The method of gassing, they used a gas called Zyklon B. In some of the gas chambers in Auschwitz, for example, they could gas more than 1,000 people at a time, and it would take up to 15 to 20 minutes for people to die the most horrific death. The gas chambers were disguised as shower rooms with shower heads so that people wouldn't panic and wouldn't know that they were about to die. So this is an event in history, one of the most horrific events in history. Why do I think we should teach about it today? Because some people say, well, surely if you're teaching young people, teenagers, about such things, you're going to upset them, you're going to make them cry. Well, actually, I believe that if what we achieve is to upset young people and make them cry, then actually that's a failure. I don't want them just to feel sad. I want them to feel angry that this was allowed to happen in our world, that people stood by and did nothing to stop it. but also angry that atrocities and genocide still continue in our world today, with people doing very, very little to stop them. And what I hope is that they can channel that anger into action. What I hope is that when we teach young people where prejudice can lead, whether it be to the killing fields of the Holocaust, or to the massacres in Rwanda, or to the murder of Muslims in Srebrenica, when they see where prejudice and discrimination and racism leads, hopefully then they will get the impetus, the motivation to stop it in its tracks. What I hope to teach our young people at my school is that actually diversity is not something that we should be scared about. We don't want to teach toleration. Let's face it, how many of you want to be tolerated? We need to go far further than that and actually teach our young people to celebrate diversity, to be excited about diversity, and to think, isn't it great that there are people who share a common humanity with me, but whose life experiences are vastly different? Doesn't that make life interesting? What we want to teach the young people at my school is to be upstanders, not bystanders, when they are faced with the suffering and the oppression of their fellow human beings. So when they see bullying happening at school, when they look at the suffering of other people through homelessness or the plight of refugees, when they see the rise of the far right, that actually they're not complacent, they're not indifferent, but they stand up to be counted and they say, we don't want that in our society, in our school, in our town, in our society, and in our world. And we will stand up to make sure that our voices are heard and we will stop it in its tracks. What we are trying to say to our young people is genocide, prejudice, racism is not, none of these things are inevitable. All of these things happen just because enough good people stand by and do absolutely nothing to stop it. So we want to say to our young people, get involved, be the change that you want to see in the world. Thank you very much indeed.